in a study hall with no walls and no ceiling, only shelves of scrolls that stretch further than any eye could follow. 5 voices gather once again. Last week they studied the first Torah portion, Parashat, on the world's beginning. Tonight, the rain has not yet stopped falling. Tonight they study Noah.
You are late, Rabban Gamliel. The rain outside my window in Troyes was heavier than usual tonight. I nearly stayed home to mind my vineyard instead of my scrolls.
The rain follows me tonight as well, Rashi. It seems fitting, given our portion. Where is the Baal Shem Tov?
I am already here, my friends, simply listening to the rain before I said a word. There is Torah in rain if you let it fall on you long enough before you rush to explain it.
Rabbi Akiva, you are unusually quiet for a man who once outwalked a shepherd's flock to reach the study hall before sunrise.
I am thinking of Noach, Hillel. I have been thinking of him all week. I am not sure yet whether I admire him or whether I am angry with him. And I suspect that is exactly why we are here tonight.
And so, as they have done for longer than time itself has properly kept count, 5 teachers open the scroll to a new week and to an old flood.
Let us begin where the text begins. These are the generations of Noach. Noach was a righteous man, perfect in his generations. Noach walked with God. 3 words trouble every reader who has ever paused over them: in his generations.
Trouble? It reads to me as simple praise. What is there to trouble over?
Because our sages themselves could not agree. Rabban Gamliel. Some read it as the highest praise, that even surrounded by a generation of thieves and violent men, Noach remained righteous. How much more so, they say, would he have been a giant of righteousness had he lived in a generation like Abraham's. But others read the very same 3 words as a quiet demotion. Only in his generations was he considered righteous. Measured against corruption, he shines. Set beside Abraham, they say, he would have been unremarkable.
I confess, Rashi, that second reading has bothered me since I was old enough to study it. A man is told the world will drown, and God commands him to build an ark for himself, his wife, his sons, and their wives. 8 people. And Noach says nothing. He does not argue. He does not plead for his neighbors. He simply builds.
You compare him to Abraham already, Akiva, before we have even reached Abraham's portion.
How can I not? When God tells Abraham that Sodom will be destroyed, Abraham stands before heaven itself and argues, "Shall the judge of all the earth not do justice?" Noach is given 120 years of warning by our tradition while he builds that ark plank by plank in full view of his neighbors, and not once do we hear him ask heaven for mercy on their behalf.
May I offer a gentler thought, Akiva? You measure Noach by what he did not say. I wonder if we ought to measure him, at least in part, by what he did not stop doing.
Meaning?
120 years, by our tradition, of building, in full view, as you say. Our sages teach that Noach planted cedars, and when neighbors asked why, he told them plainly, "A flood is coming, and this wood will become the ark that saves us." He was not silent, Akiva. He simply did not argue with heaven. He argued patiently for a century with his own generation, and they would not listen.
A century of quiet planting is not the same as one man standing before the Holy One and demanding justice for strangers.
No, it is not the same. It is a different shape of courage, and I will not pretend it is the louder one. But consider, I have spent my own life teaching that we must love peace and pursue peace, love people, and draw them near to Torah. Not every righteous man is given Abraham's voice for arguing with heaven. Some are given only a hammer, a saw, and 100 years of neighbors who will not hear them. What should such a man do, if not keep building? I want to ask a different question, and I ask it as one who has had to lead a fractious people myself. Was Noach ever appointed to lead anyone at all?
The text does not say so.
Then perhaps this is the answer to Akiva's anger. Abraham pleads for Sodom because Abraham has already been told he will father a great nation. He has already been given the burden and the authority of a shepherd of peoples. Noach is given no such charge. He is told to save his own household and the animals entrusted to him. That is a difficult enough task for one man to carry for a century. We should be careful, all of us who have sat in seats of communal leadership, before we demand that every righteous man also be a head of the Sanhedrin.
And yet, Rabban Gamliel, is it not precisely leaders like you and I who must ask the hardest question of this story, not whether Noach was permitted to stay silent, but whether silence, even permitted, is the model we want our own students to learn from him?
My friends, may an old Hasid trouble you with a small story before you finish dividing Noah in two? You already know we cannot stop you, Israel. There was once a poor villager who owned a single candle. Each night when the darkness came, he lit it, and it gave him just enough light to see his own hands, his own table, his own door. A traveler once said to him mockingly, "Your candle is so small, it does not light the whole village." And the villager answered, "It is not required to light the whole village. It is required to keep me from stumbling in my own house. If everyone tended their own candle as faithfully as I tend mine, the whole village would be lit, and no one would need to ask whose candle was biggest." I do not say this to settle the argument between Rabbi Akiva's fire and Hillel's patience. Both are true, and Torah is large enough to hold true things that pull against each other. I say only this: perhaps righteous in his generations does not mean righteous but only a little. Perhaps it means heaven does not measure a candle by the darkness around it, but by how faithfully it burns in the dark it was given.
That is a gentle answer, Yisrael. I am not sure it is a complete one, a candle that could have been carried next door and was not. I still want to know why.
Then carry that question with you all week, Akiva, the way you have clearly been carrying it already. A question carried honestly is its own kind of light.
And so, before the first plank of the ark is even mentioned, the sages have already found the floods. First difficulty, not the water, but the silence that preceded it.
Let us turn to the ark itself, the Teva. 300 cubits long, 50 wide, 30 high, 3 decks. At Zohar, some say a window, some say a luminous stone that gave light within, so that Noach would not need to sit in darkness for a year inside a floating tomb.
A year, Rashi. The text seems almost bureaucratic in its detail. Pairs of animals, 7s of the pure ones, food gathered for every living thing aboard. It reads like the account book of a man managing an impossible household.
That is precisely the point, Rabban Gamliel. Our sages teach that Noach and his sons did not sleep the entire year feeding lions at their hour, feeding doves at theirs, tending to creatures whose needs never aligned and never rested. It is one thing to be told to build an ark. It is another thing entirely to run a world's last farm for a year alone without complaint recorded in the text even once.
There is my answer to you, Akiva, if you will permit an old man to return to an old argument. Perhaps the labor of tending every living creature for a year, without a single day of rest, was itself Noach's argument with heaven. Not spoken in words, but carried out in exhausted hands.
You are a patient debater, Hillel. I will grant you that much, if nothing else, tonight.
My friends, may I offer you something I once taught my own students in Medjibuj, standing at a very different kind of flood.
Another story, Yisrael.
A teaching this time, though it lives inside a single word. In the Lashon Kodesh, our holy tongue, the word for ark, teva, is the very same word we use for word itself. A teva is a vessel. A teva is also a letter, a word, a small container built to carry something larger than itself. I used to tell my students, when the floodwaters of your own mind rise, when worry, distraction, sorrow, all the noise of a broken world pours in on every side, enter into the teva. Enter into the letters of your prayer, the actual words, one at a time, the way Noach entered the actual planks and beams of his ark. Do not try to hold back the whole flood with your bare hands. Simply step inside the word you are saying and let it carry you above water you cannot fight directly. That is a beautiful reading, Yisrael, though I confess it is rather far from the plain sense of the verse. I have never once claimed to replace you, Rashi. I have only ever tried to walk a few steps further into the orchard you already planted. You tell us what the ark was built of. I only ask what it feels like to stand inside one in a year when the rain will not stop.
Your teaching reminds me, Yisrael, of something I once said to a friend who found me teaching Torah in the open after Rome had forbidden it. He asked if I was not afraid. I told him a parable of a fox who invited fish to leave the river and join him safely on land. And the fish answered that if they were in danger even in the water where they belonged, how much more so would they be in danger on land where they did not belong at all? Torah was our water, I told him. Without it, we were not simply endangered, we were already lost. I think Noach's Ark teaches the same lesson, turned differently. The flood outside was real and total. The only safety was never to fight the water directly, but to be inside the one vessel built according to precise instruction, plank by plank, exactly as commanded.
So both of you arrive from different centuries and different metaphors at the same conclusion. The danger is real, and the safety is not found by battling the flood on its own terms, but by being precisely, faithfully inside the structure we were given.
Yes, though I would still have liked Noach to shout a warning or two on his way in.
Since none of you will let me finish a thought without a parable attached to it, let me add my own, plainly. I look at that ark, and I see the first working model of ordered community life after a world's collapse. 3 decks, the lowest for waste, the middle for animals, the top for Noach's own family and the birds. Every creature fed at its proper hour. Nothing left to chance, nothing left to sentiment. When I sat as Nasi of the Sanhedrin, I learned the same lesson the hard way. A community survives its floods, not on inspiration alone, but on structure faithfully maintained, meal after meal, hour after hour, long after the excitement of the beginning has worn off into simple exhaustion. That, my grandson, is very nearly a compliment to bureaucracy. Call it what you like, grandfather. I call it the difference between a community that survives its flood and one that drowns in its own good intentions.
When the rains finally cease, Noach sends out a raven to see whether the waters have receded. Our midrash imagines the raven arguing with him before it hoes. I know this one. Tell it, Rashi. You tell midrash better than any of us, even though you insist you only care for Peshat. The raven says to Noach, your master hates me, and you hate me. Your master allowed only 7 pairs of the pure creatures, but only 2 of my kind. Clearly I am not beloved. And you send me out on a mission from which I may not return, when you have male and female of my kind both aboard. And if I perish, the world loses its ravens entirely.
A fair complaint from a raven's point of view.
Noach answers that the raven is needed for no purpose but this one flight. The world does not depend on the raven for wine or milk or labor, only for this single act of scouting a shrinking flood. And in the end, our sages say, the raven simply circles the ark, unwilling to go far, unwilling to trust the mission fully.
And so he sends the dove instead, 3 times, if I recall the account correctly.
3 times precisely. The first time she finds nowhere to rest and returns to him. The second time she returns bearing an olive leaf in her beak. The third time she does not return at all.
I have always loved that detail more than almost any other in this portion. The dove does not simply vanish the first time she is capable of leaving. She returns twice, faithfully, to the one who sent her. And only once there is dry, sustaining land waiting for her, established firmly enough to build a life upon, does she choose not to come back. It is, I think, the gentlest possible picture of trust rewarded patiently. Not a single leap into the unknown, but small flights, testing, returning, testing again, until the moment finally arrives when staying away is not abandonment, but arrival. You would find a lesson in patience inside a bird's flight pattern, grandfather. I have found lessons in stranger places, my grandson. Once, in the argument of 2 students on my own doorstep, so loudly that I was forced to answer both of them, standing on one leg.
And then at last the covenant, the rainbow set in the clouds, a sign that the world will never again be destroyed entirely by flood.
I have always found something remarkable in the choice of sign Akiva. Not a new sound, not a new word spoken from the heavens. A rainbow, which requires both rain and light together in the very same sky at the very same moment to appear at all. I used to teach that this is itself the deepest lesson of the whole flood story. The promise is not that the rain will stop coming into a person's life. The promise is that even while the rain still falls, light can pass through it and become something beautiful, something that was never possible in dry weather alone. That is a lovely thought for a soul in need of comfort, Yisrael. But let me offer the plainer difficulty underneath it. Many of our commentators ask why humanity needed a sign at all. Does the Holy One require a physical reminder, or do we?
We do, plainly. Heaven does not forget its promises. We are the ones who forget, generation after generation. And so we are given something visible, recurring, and unmistakable, precisely because human memory for covenants is notoriously short.
There is a teaching I hold dear alongside this one, that a truly humble and righteous person seeing the rainbow does not merely admire it, but considers whether their own generation's conduct is what required the reminder to be sent again in the first place.
This is also, is it not, the moment when the 7 Noahide laws are given, the basic obligations placed upon all of humanity, not upon Israel alone. Prohibitions against bloodshed, theft, cruelty to living creatures, and the rest.
A universal code given to every descendant of Noach regardless of nation. I confess I see in it an early root of the very teaching I built my own life around, that loving one's neighbor as oneself is a great, encompassing principle. If even the nations of the world are bound by basic decency toward one another, how much more should we hold ourselves to it?
You will remember, Akiva, that I was once asked to summarize the entire Torah while a student stood balanced on one leg, waiting to see if I would fail. I told him, "What is hateful to you, do not do to your fellow." That is the whole of it. The rest is commentary. Go and learn it.
I have always thought your answer and mine were two ways of saying the very same thing, Hillel.
I have always thought so too. I simply said it standing up, and you say it as though the world were on fire.
The portion closes with a second, very different story. An entire humanity sharing one language and one set of words, gathering in the plain of Shinar to build a city and a tower reaching toward the heavens, lest we be scattered over the face of the whole earth.
It is a curious sin, if we can call it that. The generation of the flood was destroyed for violence, theft, corruption, cruelty between neighbors. The generation of the tower is scattered, not destroyed, for building, for unity itself in some sense. What precisely was their crime?
Our sages differ. Some say the tower was meant as a rebellion against heaven directly, an assault, however impossible in practice, on the heavens themselves. Others say the deeper sin was social, not theological, that a single brick, laboriously made, was mourned more than a single worker who fell to his death making it. Unity in that reading had curdled into a machine that valued its own project above the individual people building it.
That second reading unsettles me more than the first, Rashi. I have spent my whole life teaching that love of neighbor is the great principle upon which everything else depends. And here is a generation perfectly unified, speaking one language, moving as a single body, and I would call it one of the coldest societies described anywhere in the Torah.
Unity is not the same as love, Akiva. I learned that lesson many times over as Nasi. A community can move in perfect unison toward a shared goal and still trample the individual conscience of every person inside it. Pharaoh's Egypt, too, was remarkably unified.
Then what became of my students, Rabban Gamliel? The 24,000 I lost in a single season, our sages say, because they failed to treat one another with respect. Was that not in its own way a failure of unity rather than an excess of it?
I would say it was a failure of love disguised as togetherness. Students who stood shoulder to shoulder in your study hall, reciting the very same texts, and still could not extend simple honor to the person reciting beside them. The tower builders had the opposite failure. They had genuine togetherness, and no room left over for the individual at all. Both are real dangers. They simply sit on opposite ends of the same road.
Then perhaps, my friends, the lesson is that unity is like fire. A servant when it warms a home, a destroyer when it consumes the house that lit it. The builders of the tower had fire without a hearth to contain it.
I want to offer a small mercy hiding inside this difficult story. Heaven does not destroy this generation as it destroyed the generation of the flood. It scatters them, confuses their language, disperses them across the earth, and lets them begin again, each in a smaller company, each needing to learn once more how to listen closely to a neighbor who no longer shares every word in common. Perhaps that scattering, which reads at first as punishment, is also a kind of gentle correction. When unity has grown too large and too cold to notice a single suffering worker, heaven does not burn the tower down. It simply makes the crowd small enough again for people to have to look at one another's faces and struggle patiently to understand each other one more time.
That is a generous reading of a punishment, Hillel.
I have found, across a long life of study, that most punishments recorded in this book are also, if you look closely enough, invitations to begin again more carefully.
If I may close with one more small teaching, I have always found comfort, not sorrow, in the multiplying of languages at Babel. Before the scattering, humanity had one tongue and used it to build a single cold monument to its own name. After the scattering, humanity has many tongues. And somewhere within every nation's words, our tradition teaches, sparks of holiness remain scattered as well, waiting to be gathered home, one small act of goodness at a time, by anyone willing to look for them. Perhaps the multiplicity of nations and languages we live among today is not simply the scar of an old punishment. Perhaps it is also the raw material of a repair still being carried out, sentence by sentence, kindness by kindness, in more languages than the builders of the tower ever dreamed they would need.
As the scroll is rolled closed once more, each teacher is asked, as always, to leave behind a single sentence. Not a summary of the whole portion, but the one thought each intends to carry with him back into his own century.
I will carry the plain words themselves, righteous in his generations, and the reminder that even the simplest phrase in this text can hold two true readings at once if we are patient.
I will carry the ark's 3 decks, the reminder that love without structure collapses under its own good intentions, just as surely a structure without love grows cold enough to mourn a brick before it mourns a person.
And I will carry the rainbow, rain and light in the very same sky, at the very same moment. My friend, may whatever flood is rising in each of your own centuries find you already standing inside your ark, tending faithfully to whatever has been entrusted to you, until the waters recede and the olive branch finally comes.
I will carry the dove, leaving gently, returning faithfully, and trusting that the right moment to stop returning will announce itself without needing to be forced.
I will carry my own argument with Noach unfinished. I am not certain silence was the right choice for him, but I am certain that carrying the question honestly, the way our friend the Baal Shem Tov told me to, is itself a form of the love I have spent my whole life trying to teach.
And so the scroll closes on Noah. Until next, these 5 voices gather the first, when the word goes out to a man named Abamliam Lek Lecha. This is an entirely imagined conversation. Hillel, Rabban Gamliel, Rabbi Akiva, Rashi, and the Baal Shem Tov lived in different centuries and never met. Every teaching voiced by each character is drawn from or closely modeled on that sage's actual recorded teachings. The connecting conversation, reactions, and relational dynamics between them are fictional and created by this drama. This program is a work of imagination. The 5 historical figures portrayed never met. Their dialogue is a dramatized composition built on their recorded teachings, not verbatim quotation or a claim of an actual meet. The Baal Shem Tov's teachings on sparks of holiness and daily renewal, as recorded by his students. The connecting conversation, reactions, and relational dynamics between them are fictional and are created for this drama.